Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th President of the United States, once said, "Behind the ostensible government sits enthroned an invisible government, owing no allegiance and acknowledging no responsibility to the people." Keep this in mind as we discuss today the fall of Kabul and what you need to know about the geopolitical ramifications that lie ahead. My name is Dr. David Oualaalou.
And my name is Dr. Ross Stewart.
And you are watching Geopolitics in Conflict.
David, as you and I have been observing and discussing now for months, the forever war in Afghanistan looks like it's coming to a close. And what we're observing is an unfathomable tragedy. What's your take on all this?
I know it just pains me to see those images of those the Afghani people holding on to the C-130, but also how the ending of this war, 20 years, as one who spent time there, and it became clear to me back in 2006 that there is no way we can win this war. And that's where the problem that now a lot of veterans, they're going to be facing. I mean, you're talking about people soldiers that lost limbs, and all of a sudden, Taliban walked into Kabul and took over.
And you and I certainly got to observe suicides. We got to observe PTSD. The tragedy to our armed forces is incalculable as well.
Yeah, but also this highlights the failure of the American policy. You have individuals sitting in the Beltway deciding on policies that they have no clue about what's going on the ground. And this failure, by the way, didn't start last year, didn't start with the last 4 presidents. That started after the first 6 months when we went in. It was a success back then. All the U.S. Special Forces, what they've done, what the Central Intelligence Agency accomplished back then. It was after the first 6 months when all of a sudden the knuckleheads in Washington start to talk about nation building.
Oh.
And that's where...
That has been a universal failure for I don't know how many centuries. You just can't do it.
Yeah. Well, now the big concern out of all this is what lies ahead.
Oh, yeah.
And we can talk about it from so many angles, because this represents an intelligence failure. Because how can you not know that the Taliban were preparing for this? Where did they prepare this? How did they prepare for this attack? And second thing, you're going to think about the Afghan army and military, when our president is saying, no, they have a 300,000 strong man, they couldn't stand up to goat herders with some weapons from the 1940s. I mean, we are the mighty military and get defeated in that humiliated way. That's usually what pains me the most.
You take a look at this historically, you say George Bush Jr. and Dick Cheney, they said, you give us Osama bin Laden or else. And the Taliban said, well, show some evidence that he's guilty of something. And when they refused to give evidence, they went in with an armed force.
Yeah. It wasn't approached. We got into this nation building, not understanding the culture. And the failure was, the failure didn't start yesterday. The failure started back then. We didn't understand the Afghan society because it was no country in the first place. Yes, Afghanistan existed and still exists, but it's not the way you and I understand it. There are no infrastructure government-wise. There is no establishment. There's nothing. It's a tribal society. And we approached Afghanistan like this well-established country that has institutions.
Right.
And policymakers fail to understand that. And here is the sad part, Ross. Nobody's held accountable.
you know, this is, this is more than astonishing. What we see is misinformation, either deliberate or exaggeration, which is deliberate, feeding the Congress, feeding the president, feeding the American people that this is a worthy project and it's doable and we're succeeding, when clearly every indication was it isn't succeeding, it is failing, and now it has spectacularly failed.
Yeah, well, because this one now exposed things in the open. You know, I'm still digesting what just took place, even though I am not surprised at that level, because we kind of talked about it in one of our videos before.
Well, you pretty accurately predicted
Well,
what's going to happen.
It's what I saw when I was in Afghanistan.
Right.
You know, what I did learn about the Taliban from way back before even their name came out to the surface. What I learned about the Saudi funding of that ideology. What I learned about, what was happening with the ISI back then. You know, this is all come to play a role. But at the same time, policymakers in Washington don't want to hear from somebody who might have an accent or doesn't know what he is talking about.
Yeah.
That's usually the attitude in Washington. You know, that's why I speak for myself. I don't speak for all Americans here, but we're sick and tired of those knuckleheads over there. You know, and yet nobody's been held accountable. This is what needs to be done moving forward. Nobody got fired. Nobody got responsible for providing or altering intelligence reports. I wrote an article back in 2016, Ross, or 2017, addressing this issue.
Oh, wow.
The second thing, you got about 18 generals went through this war. 18 generals. Only one of them was fired, General McChrystal, because he spoke truth to power. And this is where the failure of our system. We don't want people to say the truth. Well, why not? And nobody wants to accept that. When it was warning signs, there were some people saying, this war is not going to be won militarily. You guys need to start to think differently. Nobody wants to listen.
You know, two things are coming out in the news right now.
Mm-hmm.
From some sources, they're saying, look at the consequences of this. Look at the expense. $2.13 trillion spent. You think that could have been spent someplace else? For the American people?
For sure.
How many Americans were actually killed? Do you happen to, that's 2,400, isn't it?
Somewhat around that, but even the civilians in Afghanistan.
There's 49,000 of them. And I mean, it just goes on and on. The tragedy that this whole thing represents. And the other thing that's coming out right now is the major news sources are saying, Biden, he botched this whole thing and going on and on and going. How could you botch something that's already been a tragedy for 20 years?
Well, Biden was given the wrong advice. He's the advisors on the National Security Council. Those are politicians. Those are them politicians that they just don't care about the welfare of the nation. So what they have to promote is what they want to promote. And every citizen doesn't understand. And this is where the problem that I see personally is the ramifications long term. Mind you that during Vietnam, 60,000 people died post when we left Vietnam. After we left, 60,000 people died in the area, in the whole region. Same thing, you can see the geopolitical ramifications that's going to be happening from this. Mind you now, already, for example, the Sultanate of Oman already acknowledged the Taliban. Russia is considering acknowledging the Taliban, because Taliban is a force you're going to have to deal with one way or another. China, as we know, they've already established that kind of friendship with the Taliban.
Interestingly, the Russian embassy is still open and the Chinese embassy is still open, and they're being protected by the Taliban.
Yeah, well, it tells you right there. So there are those who say, well, the president of Afghanistan, Ghani, who is like, sort of a wimp, he fled with some reports that I read, and I am not certain of this. I'm going to fact check this one again from my own sources and get back to you on this one to make sure. There were a helicopter went with him and 4 cars full of money.
That's not surprising.
Because that guy, we the one who put him in power. What do you expect? The guy was more interested in power than serving the Afghani people.
Well, he's certainly collecting a big payday.
I'm sure, but things will catch up with him. But here is the big issue of all this, geopolitically speaking. Now this failure, this calamity, geopolitical one that is, now is sending shock waves to allies, U.S. allies.
What's your opinion on what must the Taiwanese be thinking?
Oh, they will be thinking in terms of should we depend or count on the Americans? But the same thing will apply to Philippines. The same thing will apply to even certain elements in Vietnam. All ASEAN countries. Mind you that the United States is already conducting some military exercises with 21 countries from that region. Europeans are being quiet about it. They know how the failure of this, and they are being quiet. As a matter of fact, the allies now are wondering what happened to America. Well, here is the answer. What happened to America is the geopolitical shift that's been taking place, and we're having a hard time accepting that. That is what's happening. And this, the fall of Kabul just put a nail on that coffin.
Wow.
That is where I see the one of the challenges. One of the issues that came up that you don't hear much about, it has to do with the UN Security Council.
India.
Yeah, with India. Well, guess what India did? They blocked Pakistan from addressing the Security Council. Because India holds the presidency of the National Security Council for the month of August. See, every month one country holds it. Well, India blocked it, Don't they understand that Pakistan played a role in bringing the Taliban and the U.S. to the negotiating table?
That has not been very well publicized.
No, it's not, because India has also its own problems. And actually, I had a chance to read the transcript issued from the Pakistani ambassador to the UN. And if you permit me to quote right here, he said, and I quote, his name is Monir Akram, and he said, "This confirms Pakistan's long-held contention that India does not deserve to be on the Security Council, much less to aspire to become a permanent member of the council," which is a joke, by the way. It's a violation of the resolution of the Security Council on Jammu and Kashmir, and it is in the process of conducting campaign of genocide against the people of Jammu and Kashmir with 900,000 troops, Indian troops, deployed to the occupied territory, end of quote. So that tells you right there where you can just see, and this is not about India, this is about the much bigger picture. China will be concerned because of the border. Okay?
Yes.
The Russians will be concerned because of the border. Okay? Iran will be concerned because of the border. I won't be surprised that Iran will be the first to acknowledge the Taliban.
And we know that Pakistan must be concerned about the border.
Well,
they share a pretty big border with those people.
Well, that's why they closed the border, but Pakistan will suffer. Because Pakistan suffered when they joined the U.S. War on terror. It's just the ramifications of all this. It will be very, very serious. And we should embrace ourselves for when those events happen, we shouldn't be shocked and surprised. It's because everything we do, we play politics with.
Yes.
American life. So I can just imagine right now a soldier who's been in Afghanistan a few years back, fighting whatever, and lost a limb. And now watching those images of the Taliban walking into the presidential palace.
I actually saw one of them interviewed. He was in despair.
Yeah.
He had lost friends.
Yeah, as one who was there and I saw with my own eyes. It's just sad to see what was happening yesterday. And people clinging to hope just to get out of there and falling from the plane because they were holding to the tire of the C-130. And so it's desperation.
These people must be beyond desperate. They have no prediction as to whether they're going to be walking down the street and shot or left alone.
Yeah, that's and this is what something we didn't, because here's the problem with all the conversation that took place in Washington about what to do about Afghanistan. I mean, at some point we were going to have to leave one way or another.
Right.
Okay? But the idea that the intelligence estimates, all of them, didn't consider this scenario tells you right there where the failure is. You know, it's because we depend too much on satellites, we depend too much on, rather than what's taking place on the ground. You know, that's part of the human intelligence aspects of it. But this one now goes beyond what we will expect to see moving forward, let alone what you mentioned earlier about the cost.
Oh.
Yeah, that is a major issue.
You know, you take a look at caring for the people. How on earth could the United States care for the people in the ground, the Afghanis? You know, they talk about education for women, and on and on and on, as if the United States can do anything about it, when we can hardly manage that ourselves here in our own country.
Yeah. Plus, it's a different culture.
Right.
You know, there is no. It will have to be a political solution. That's a given. You know, the question now becomes is how they're gonna go about it. You know, we shouldn't interfere into that. We shouldn't tell them what to do. It's like look what we did when we imposed Ghani as a president on the Afghanis. You know, that just doesn't work.
Catastrophe.
Yeah, it doesn't work because we don't understand the culture. And yet, as I said earlier, when sometimes you get these politicians in Washington, they just have no clue about the culture and start making decisions for the country that's going to end up going the wrong direction, like what we saw with the
Here's
fall
a
of
provocative question for you and I.
Kabul. Certainly.
Who actually won here? Well, did the war machine manufacturers win? Did the bankers in Dubai who took the corrupt money from Afghani politicians, did they win? Did the military contractors win?
Well, the answer, Ross, is yes.
Yes.
Did
So
they?
there are some clear winners here.
Yeah.
Just not who we had anticipated and hoped for.
Because I won't be surprised. There is already a conversation in Washington right now about, okay, what is the next conflict?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I won't be surprised, Russ, because till the American people wake up, sort of for them to understand where this country is headed, you know, nothing's going to change. We can be talking all we want. And Roosevelt was right when he said what he said, way back.
Exactly.
So it's a sad day, literally, for not only our veterans, not only us as a country, not only for the Afghanis themselves. It's a sad day for what we have become in addressing those international conflicts that we're thinking only in terms of a barrel of an M16 to resolve the issues.
And the people of the world who are paying attention know that.
Well, you wonder that's why they wonder, is like, you know, what's wrong with America? Why are they doing what they're doing? It just, there is no more conversations. There are no more debates before you embark on a policy. And you know, Congress tends to spend money that doesn't belong it because it's not their money. You know,
Right.
It's your tax dollars. It's your money, and you have the right to know where that money is spent. You know, why do we have to waste $2.3 trillion when we got issues here, as you mentioned earlier, which makes perfect sense. To a common man like you and I, Ross, and all of us, you use that money right here at home first. You know, yes, we can help other countries, but there is a limit where you draw the line, and nobody's willing to speak the truth to power in Washington. And that's why, if you ever do that, you get ostracized, marginalized, and you kind of like, you don't know what you're talking about. That is the problem.
You know, no matter what you've got to say about the Chinese Communist Party, they say out loud in words, we're here to serve the people. I have yet to hear an American politician say, we're here to serve American people.
No, because we think only in terms of the next quarter, next elections. That's what our problem is.
What would you say is the real takeaway for our viewers on this whole situation in Afghanistan?
Well, this will not be the last. You know, I am sure there are going to be other conflicts. Even if we create the conflicts, shall we say, and we say it straightforward. You know, that's not going to be the last. The question you need to know and ask and have answers to is, what are they wasting our tax money on issues that have nothing to do with us? You know, and that has to stop.
Is there anything else you'd like to say? For example, the 5,000 prisoners are going to be released?
Oh, don't even get me on that, Ross. Because they did indeed. The 5,000 prisoners, they were held in Bagram, they're released. Taliban released them. You can just imagine what they're going to be. The first thing they're going to be doing is bearing arms for the Taliban.
Oh,
That's
absolutely
the first
right.
thing. Those are ISIS, by the way, and Al-Qaeda fighters. And some of them were flown from Guantanamo into Bagram.
It doesn't stop, does
Yeah,
it?
it just, because it's chaotic how our foreign policy is. It's sad. It's very sad.
We'd like to thank you for watching. We'd like to thank you for subscribing, because it makes such a difference in terms of our ability to get the word out to other people.
And as always, stay informed. Till next time. Bye-bye.